extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I'm delighted to be here with you tonight to launch the QBM Griffith Responsible Leadership Masterclass for 2017. The Masterclass is an exciting stage in the scholarships competition, a part of your journey, as it were, in this competition, and it's being jointly offered by Griffith University and the Courier Mail's Queensland Business Monthly. And this is the second year that the Responsible Leadership Scholarship Competition has run. The scholarships are, I believe, an expression of the business school's commitment and desire to encourage and support remarkable, responsible leaders in business, leaders of the future. Scholarship recipients have the opportunity to study for a Griffith MBA, an MBA that explores all the business disciplines that you might expect, accounting and reporting, economics, finance, people management, marketing, strategy, and so on. But the Griffith MBA has something distinct, and it's something that gives you a distinct advantage, and that's because it's built on values that we believe are crucial to doing business in the 21st century. And those values are sustainable business practice and practices, responsible leadership, and an Asia-Pacific focus. Those values are core to the content of what you learn on the programme, and they'll influence your leadership practice in ways that really will set you apart from your peers and open up new career development opportunities for you. Now, what I want to say is a few words also about the business school, the community that you'll actually be joining if you come and study with us. As Pro-Vice Chancellor, I work with a fantastic group of staff and with the students and graduates and alumni to build what we believe is a forward-focused, future-ready business school. And our mission is to deliver an outstanding business education and research that is delivered through engagement with industry, government, and the various social communities that we serve. And our mission is to do that in ways that contribute to a prosperous, equitable, and sustainable future. And in many ways, the MBA that you're here to observe and to study on epitomises all of that. It embodies those values and that mission. And there's plenty of evidence that the business school is on its way to achieving its mission. So, for example, the MBA that you're applying to study on was last week once again ranked 4th in Australia in the prestigious AFR Boss Magazine rankings. And the staff that teach on the MBA come from various disciplines and subject areas that are world class. So, for example, in the prestigious Shanghai Jiaotong rankings, and those are very good rankings in the university sphere, tourism and hospitality at Griffith is ranked number 2 in the world. Politics and international relations is in the top 100 in the world. Business and commerce is in the top 200 in the world, and economics has just moved at Griffith into the top 300. And that is no mean feat. That's a great endorsement, if you like, of the quality of the education that we provide here at the Griffith Business School. And I mention those rankings not only because they make us proud at GBS, and rightly so, but also because they're important to you as potential students on our programme. By studying with us at an institution ranked so highly, you too can benefit from the reputational effects of those rankings by associating yourself with our success, and that's good for you and for your careers. Now, in a moment, you're going to hear from Natalie Gregg. And Natalie is editor of Queensland Business Monthly and deputy business editor with the Courier Mail. And we're delighted that once again, QBM has chosen to partner with us on this incredibly important scholarship. And we very much appreciate their support in publicising and helping us roll out the competition. Unfortunately, as much as Natalie would have wanted to be here with us this evening, she couldn't for a range of reasons, work commitments. She couldn't be with us in person, so she's recorded a video message for you that we'll play in a moment. By way of introduction, Natalie has a bachelor's degree in journalism and in business. She's an very experienced journalist and an editor with more than a decade of experience in the industry. She spent a large part of her time at the Courier Mail, but also with stints in Melbourne and the Herald Sun, and also in London, working in media and comms. So without further ado, I think we'll get the video played, and then I'll come back and finish up. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Natalie Gregg and I'm the Courier Mail's Queensland Business Monthly editor. What we do in Queensland Business Monthly is share remarkable stories of success and entrepreneurship in Queensland's business community. And there's no shortage of these kinds of stories. Many of the senior corporates who feature in the magazine, and indeed some of our readers, are people who've had their careers accelerated by doing an MBA. That's why it was a natural fit for us to team up with Griffith University for this MBA scholarship, worth $50,000. It's a wonderful opportunity and will enhance the strength of the Queensland business community. I wish you all the very best and I look forward to reading your entries.
Okay, so thank you Natalie for that lovely endorsement, and as you can tell from her enthusiasm, she's a big supporter of these scholarships herself as much as QBM. As you're aware, we have 4 mini lectures, as Chris has already mentioned those, scheduled for this evening, and they're delivered by some of our wonderful expert academic staff. They're arrayed at the back of the theatre at the moment. I'd like to personally thank them. Thanks Sarah Davis, Nick Barter, Peter Jordan and Robin Roberts for presenting this evening. Very much appreciate them coming along and joining in this event. Each of them will present briefly on a topic that relates to the core values of the MBA that I've just talked about, and those mini lectures are an opportunity for you to experience firsthand what it's like to be a student in the MBA program here at Griffith Business School. And it'll also provide you with content for your reflective essay following the masterclass. This evening you're also going to hear from last year's winner James Pearce and runner-up Tricia Liebk. Sorry Tricia, apologies. It's a great pleasure to have both of them here with us, and we're delighted that they've agreed to speak, and so thanks to them. And I'd like to take this opportunity now to wish you all the very best for the competition, and we look forward to judging your submissions. And even if you're unsuccessful in this journey, in this process, please be assured that you really will be most welcome on our MBA program to join the Griffith Business School community that I've talked about, and we very much look forward to your doing so. So now I'm going to hand you back to Chris Fleming, the Griffith MBA Director. And he's going to provide a little forward, I think, to this evening's masterclass and an introduction to each of our speakers. Before I hand back, I should perhaps just say a few words about Chris, who's now shrinking into the corner. But he is a founding member of the Griffith Centre for Sustainable Enterprise and a member of the University Cities Research Centre. He's a senior associate of mainstream economics and policy. He's an applied microeconomist with teaching, consulting and public policy experience. And Chris's research and consulting interests specifically include things like social and economic project program evaluation, natural resource and environmental economics, and the economic determinants of subjective well-being, which, if you think about it, really are, again, attributes that are embodied in the MBA program that you're seeking to join. Prior to joining the business school, Chris also worked as a senior consultant for Marsden Jacob Associates and as a senior advisor for the New Zealand Ministry for the Environment. So, folks, very good luck for the 2017 Griffith QBM MBA Responsible Leadership Scholarship Competition. Please join me in welcoming Chris back. Thank you.
Can I take my notes, David?
I haven't. Oh.
You sure? Thank you. Trying to make my life difficult. That's right. Okay, so before we move to the next presentation, just a little bit of background about, I guess, the university and the MBA. The university itself was established in the 1970s as a university that was determined to be different. So it was a university that focused on sustainable environmental matters and social responsibilities. So it's always been a core part of the university. In fact, the School of Environment at Griffith University is the oldest. It's the first School of Environment in Australia and is still one of the largest. And the business school shares those original values. About 5 years ago, the director at the time, who was in fact Nick Barter, who's going to speak shortly, wanted to completely revamp the MBA from the ground up and really focus on those core values. That is, responsible leadership, sustainable business practices, and an Asia-Pacific focus. And so every single course that you do as part of the MBA at Griffith University will have those core values embedded within it. So we introduced a new course on sustainability, but that's not where it stops. We've actually made sure those core values are on every single subject that we offer as a part of the core of the MBA. So for example, as David said, I'm an economist, I teach the economics into the MBA. So in the economics MBA course, you'll hear about the economics of climate change, you will hear about sustainable development, you'll discuss issues such as, why would Deloitte Access Economics want to put a monetary value on the Great Barrier Reef, which they did a few weeks ago. And so it's very much a core part of the MBA as you go through. And that focus is really resonating with our students. And we're seeing that in some of the rankings that are coming out. And in 2013, the program was awarded a Green Gown Award, a National Green Gown Award for contribution to teaching and sustainability. And as David mentioned, in the most recent Financial Review ranking, we came fourth. And one of the really pleasing aspects of that ranking from my perspective and from all of our conveners' perspectives was that a lot of that ranking is based on alumni feedback. And over half of the alumni who responded to the Financial Review survey said a key strength of our program was our focus on sustainability and responsible leadership. So it seems to be resonating with students. And it's not 1980 anymore, right? Greed is no longer good. We know that businesses have responsibilities to shareholders, but guess what? They also have responsibilities to their staff, they have responsibilities to their supply chain, and ultimately they have responsibilities to the communities in which they operate. And so our MBA is about creating leaders who can be leaders for the 21st century, responsible leaders, not 1980s greed is good style leaders. Okay, Nick, Professor Nick Barter, as I said, was the previous MBA director and the one who really was the driving force behind the revolution of our MBA to focus on these values. He is now the academic director of Griffith Online, so is charged with delivering or helping the university deliver quality online programs, not just in the business school, but across the whole university. Nick's research interests are very strongly in the sustainability and strategy space. And he teaches, he's one of the conveners of our core sustainability course in the MBA. So really there's no better person to give you this presentation on sustainable business practices. So on that note, Nick, welcome. Thank you.
That was very nice. Thank you. Hello. No feedback. Okay, great. I need that. Thank you. Little bit of feedback. Hello to the people online. I should probably say that, given my current role within the university, and obviously hello to you as well. I'm getting a bit of feedback. Is that you're on it, I presume? Is it okay for? Yeah, great. Well, it's very difficult, I think, to probably do justice to a subject that typically takes a lot longer to teach. And I'm going to try and just give you a little bit of an overview. One of the things I'm going to try and do in this little talk, it's a little bit of a philosophical overtone going on here. And I could explain to you if I had the depth and time of a full course to explain why we do that. But really what we're trying to get at is how sustainability and the thinking behind sustainability is actually about a rethinking of who we are as human beings. It is a rethinking of how we interact with the world around us. And in that regard, what it actually does do is it challenges conventional business theory. Now, I'm not going to have the time to explain that in depth to you, but it's something that is inherent to the subject. And you will find it in common parlance in terms such as systems thinking, in terms of nonlinear thinking, and the like. So what I want to do is just start with a bit of a background, bit of a story so far. Sustainability is, depending on who you ask, has been an idea that's been around since the early 60s. Now, some people would claim an earlier history than that, but we're not going to go back that far. And one of the most famous books was this book called Silent Spring, written by Rachel Carson. And that book was basically about the use of DDT in terms of as a pesticide and what the impact of that was. And the other big significant event, and this is interesting thing about this picture, is we all know it now. We've all seen it. It's apparently one of the most popular pictures in the world. But that understanding of seeing the Earth from space was significant. And it was significant because of that, okay? This guy called Barry Commoner brought out these 4 laws. One of them is in red, and the reason for that, again, is because I don't actually agree with it, but it's this nature of this word nature being different somehow to the word of humans, and we could explain that, but I'm not going to. But the key thing I want you to pick up from there is what we had in just a little bit over my lifetime, so actually a very short period of time in human history, was this different understanding of humanity and a different understanding of our place within this whole scheme of things. And that was embedded in a book called Our Common Future, which was a UN book, which some people say was a political compromise. It doesn't really matter. What the key point is they describe this understanding here as being a Copernican revolution. And for any of you who know your ancient history, Copernicus was the guy that said, the Earth goes round the Sun does not go round the Earth is not at the centre of the universe. And he said that in the 1500s. And although we can't place ourselves there, if you think about those times and you think about actually the impact of that statement in the 1500s, that's a huge impact. You know, it's a huge rock of our worldview, shake of our worldview. And the argument here is that sustainability is a similar shake on humans' worldview. Okay, how we understand the world around us, how we interact with it. And that, in and of itself, when you unpick it, starts to unpick conventional business theories. Okay? And so, when that story gets continued, what we find is that our common future and sustainability, one of the things often get shouted at for, perhaps, or questioned on is it about the environment? But what I really wanted to bring out was it's nothing to do with the environment. It's actually to do with, it's a story about how we progress on this planet. It's a story about how we might want to live on this planet. And you might say, well, what's that got to do with organizations? But hopefully you'll realize or understand that actually organizations are the change makers of our world around us. Everything we have in this room, everything walking outside of this room is a result of the power of organizations. Organizations are those tools, okay, that we use to create that. The other thing I wanted to bring out, just to kind of ram home this point, was we talk about the environment, and I could have some interesting debates with Chris. I've had interesting debates with him about how he talks about the environment, how he puts a price on it. I argue that he shouldn't. He argues that he should, okay? But what I want to get across to you is this notion of the environment not being a separate sphere. And that's one of the ways that we try and problematize your thinking. We try and shake up your thinking on sustainability, particularly to get you to think outside of categories, outside of separation. And the other thing I wanted to bring forward was the 25-year update to Our Common Future, and it was called Resilient People, Resilient Planet. And there's an interesting change in tone there, because what that update is saying is actually what we've got to work out. It's not about saving anything, because we got lost in that kind of language, particularly in the media. We've got to think about how do we create resilient ways for our society to continue. And, you know, a couple of days ago, or yesterday, sorry, you see this starting to come out in the media. It's not just the hurricane, but it's also, hang on, all the power went down. Can we start to create power systems that are resilient to shocks, okay? But the key thing I want to get across to you, and the key reason it makes sense in our MBA particularly, not just because of where we've come from, is because the key decision makers in how we move forward, it's not me and you as individual consumers, if you like. It is actually me and you as corporate strategists. It's me and you as decision makers, because organizations are the tools of change in society. And so that's one of the reasons why it's writ large in our MBA, but also one of the reasons why what we're trying to do here and bringing you in is give you this shaken up view of the world, get you to see what sustainability asks you to do, and start to bring you into a new way of thinking about the purpose of business and about what business can achieve. Now, if you kind of follow that through, the obvious challenge here is that in 1960, there were 3 billion people on the planet, roughly. And a lot of the business theories that were laid down in the 60s and the early 70s still have echoes today. And still form a lot of textbook material and the like. But by 2012, we'd over doubled in terms of the number of people on the planet. And the simple thing here is to think about this room, if you like. And if we said, well, actually, in the space of just under 90 years, if you like, we're going to go from having a third of the people in this room to 3 times that. We're going to have, you know, we've gone from 3 people in this room to 10 people in this room. And I said to you, but all the theories we had about how to run things when there was 3 of us in this room, if I asked you this question, do you think those theories would be the same when there's 10 people in this room, we've all got to live in this room together? You would go, not sure. Don't think they probably would be. Think we'd have to think about a few things. We'd have to think about waste. We'd have to think about what was okay. We'd have to think about how we shared things. We'd have to think about what we did with particular resources. And that really is driven and is driving the biggest challenge. So you'll be aware of exponential curves of growth for economies. You'll be aware of exponential curves in terms of take-up of technology, mobile phones, computers, etc. That exponential curve, and how does business serve it? But how does it serve it in a way where we think about what world we want around us? How does it serve it in a way where we don't necessarily, being controversial, destroy the barrier reef in the process? How do we serve it in a way where we're smart about what we do with our waste? How do we serve it in a way where we think about the societies that we want to create and what is the role of business in that? And the long and short of all that is we're moved here from a kind of separatist view of the world to a very integrated, overlapping view of the world. And a concentric circle view of the world, if you like. And the key thing to point out about those concentric circles is the dotted lines matter. Okay? It's one of the things, I think, for all conceptual diagrams in business theory is that the picture matters, and the dotted lines matter because they remind you that we don't live in isolation, and they remind you that the economy doesn't exist in isolation of society, and they remind you that society doesn't exist in isolation from you breathing and eating. Mm-hmm. So if we were on the course, I'd be taking you through ideas such as eco-footprinting. And that's a really simple idea. It just says to you, think about what you've got on right now. Where did it come from? How did it get here? How much energy was involved in moving it to you? What are you going to do with it when it's done? How much stuff had to be used to give you the stuff that you have? Another simple idea to think about with this is to think about the fact that actually every single thing you have, everything, is earth stuff. Everything came from somewhere. Yeah? It didn't come from outside of the earth, right? And when you're trying to do that for 10 billion people, and you're trying to do that in a way which is less wasteful because it's necessary, you've got to think again about how you do some of those things. Carbon footprint, obviously, we know climate change. Interestingly enough, 6 years ago when I started lecturing on this MBA and we talked about climate change, we used to have debates about it. We've moved past that now, thankfully. You start thinking about closed-loop manufacturing. What does that mean? And what does closed-loop manufacturing lock you into in terms of your strategic opportunities? Because one of the common things you learn in strategy is about competitive advantage and freedom of movement. Well, actually, closed-loop manufacturing hinders that to a degree. But it also releases new competitive advantages. Do we have to start thinking in terms of service, not product? And that's to do with starting to think about the underlying utility of the products we buy. Okay? What are they actually providing us with? Do we need to start thinking about new production methods? Low temperature, low pressure, less energetic inputs. Okay? I don't expect all of this to kind of float in now because we would spend time unpacking this. Do we need to start thinking about new ways of accounting and economics? So we heard Chris mention wealth and well-being. Do we need to start thinking about well-being as measures for how we run our society? You know, Chris and I have had plenty of debates about how actually GDP, just a measure of how much you're spending as an economy, is pretty naive and immature as a measure of the success of your society. And so what we do in sustainability is we take you through these ideas, but we get you to unpick some of the conventions of business as well. So we get to have a go at separation. We get to have a go at this notion of profit is an end in itself. You know, Business 101 almost seems to be, what's the purpose of business? Oh, maximize profit. What does maximize mean? How do you do that? What's profit? How malleable is profit? What would a good accountant tell you about profit? Is profit the end? No, or is it a means to an end? How is profit realized? Through value. How do you get value? What does value actually rely on? And how does that relate back to constructs of what we are as human beings? And then value as dollars. I'm not going to go into that, it's too controversial for this session. And what we want you to start thinking about is we want you to start thinking about yourself as an individual, yes, but also as a node in a network. And start thinking about your organizations and node in networks. And how do they then operate in those networks? Okay. And perhaps just to kind of summarize this, we live in an epoch called the Anthropocene. This is a term fashioned by a chap called Paul Crutzen. And the idea of the Anthropocene, anthro for human, is that we are the major change makers of the world around us. And so we've reached this kind of position of high power, if you like, on changing the world around us. And what world we want around us is our responsibility. Okay? We've, if you like, emerged from the naivety of the past, where we were small and the world was big. We're now big and the world is relatively small. We have huge amounts of power. But at the same token, what do we want to do with that? And so I'm not going to delve into these. But what we try and do with the sustainability course is get you just to think about really brass tacks things, and we show you logics for how you can go from thinking about the air you breathe and thinking about the water you drink and thinking about the food you eat and thinking about the people you meet. And the reason we wanted you to think at that very simple human level is, one, because you can, because slogans like global, not local don't work because we can't think globally, right? They're slogans, but they're not actionable. Those are actionable, and we'll show you how the logic of those thinking tools, if you like, the logic of those questions can actually take you to some quite interesting places in terms of innovation. And when you get into innovation, which is the core of any business, you actually get into developing new strategies, new long-term strategies, new competitive advantages for your organization. So that's basically what we do with the sustainability course. And there's a bit of a flag. The nice thing about our MBA is you will look around the country. You won't get that anywhere else. So that's it. Thank you for your time. I was virtually on time, I think, because I have to finish at 7:05. I don't know, is there questions? Or yeah.
Can be questions?
Yeah, okay. Or have I left you wondering? Thank you very much, sir, for asking the question.
Thank you very much. That was a great speech. Really appreciated that. The questions I have, very thought-provoking, the information that you've given us, and I just wanted to know from your point of view, how much is the science and political views, how much of that is an influence in today's society, I suppose, with the current political situation and the advancement of science, like is.
Oh gosh, when you ask that question, I think of Donald Trump.
Well, not so much Donald Trump.
And then I think of our current debates in Australia about coal-fired power stations and the like. Look, there's a long answer to this, which I probably want to go into, but I want to avoid, and probably a bit back and forth so we can tease it out fully. I would say this. I think it's actually helpful if government isn't involved in this, because I think when you boil it back, the last thing any good business person wants is any type of regulation in this area, because it hampers innovation. To try and summarize all of that, I think we all know that we've got to get on this bus. I think the politicians are always a bit late to every argument. You know, if we were back in the 60s and it was about human rights for coloured people, or if we were back even hundreds of years ago and it was about slavery, we'd all be like, yeah, look, we've really got to get past this. But it's only the pollies that kind of, yeah, so that's, I'm trying to deal with it quickly and lightly because of the forum. Yeah, so. Any other questions? Okay, that's great. Look, I hope I made you think. I hope I've piqued your interests in slightly different areas. I hope I've been a little bit controversial for you as well. If it doesn't shake up your worldview a little bit, then my argument is it's not actually doing its job. And one of the things you need to be, I think, as a responsible business leader going into the 21st century is you need to be able to be across a lot of these different ideas, because the old ways aren't going to cut it. Mm-hmm.
Just before you finish up, I think we've got a online question.
Ooh. Oh, okay.
Hi, Nick. Alana Ball asks, what do you believe will make a responsible leader of the future?
Ooh. Okay. I think a responsible leader of the future will think systemically, will think of their organisation as a tool, will use language in their organisation which is about humanising as opposed to dehumanising. Obvious example would be, and my own organisation suffers with this, it would stop giving me a staff number and start calling me my name, right? I think a responsible business leader of the future would probably start to do away with the functional splits in organisations. And most importantly, a responsible business leader of the future would know where their product came from, how it got there, what was involved in getting it there, and what they were going to do with it after it was done. And they would also work out ways to enable that product, if it was of value to society, to be available to the whole of society. The last thing is they would think about the pay differentials in their organisation. They would not allow them to accelerate to the kind of levels we've seen over the last 10, 20 years. Yeah.
We have another one from Joseph Costello. Yeah. What do you think of construction projects such as light rail and desalination plants in terms of expenditure versus well-being? Are these responsible?
I don't know anything about that area, so I might look to my economist friend.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Certainly. Joseph would like to know, what do you think of construction projects such as light rail and desalination plants in terms of expenditure versus well-being? Are these responsible?
Look, I think light rail makes a lot of sense on a lot of levels in terms of it gives access to all aspects of society to be able to be connected, right? You don't have to own a car, you don't have to have a large amount of money to get to socialise, to get to work, etc. So I think public transport would always get a tick from me. Desal is a very expensive, dirty way to make water. Right? Nothing lives near a desal plant. You use a lot of energy to make fresh water out of salt water. Desal's one big advantage, of course, is it's climate independent. Right? You don't have to wait for anything to rain. You don't have to fill up a dam, etc. And that's why it's been popular, because you can just flick the switch and it will go. But it's expensive and it's dirty, so I would say desal is the method of last resort in terms of producing water.
Our online viewers are very engaged.
Got another one?
We have another too,
That's
so
it.
we might have to wrap it up after these couple. I'm very, very sorry for my pronunciation. MD Masam Islam asks, thanks so much, Nick. A very nice presentation. Question is, as part of the organisation network, what steps Griffith University has taken so far to change the behaviour for other organisations?
Okay, it's a wonderful question, because one of the joys of being an academic is you tell everybody else what to do, right? I think, as I think about this MBA, it's best, I think anybody knows we're the only carbon neutral one in the Southern Hemisphere. As you think about the wider organisation, we have, I think it would be fair to say that we have done bits and pieces on sustainability, but the most interesting thing for us now is we're, the business school in the past, and I think still currently has signed up to what's called the UN Global Compact, which is about how you treat people. And going forward, obviously we have a sustainable enterprise unit within the business school, but then at a university level, we're actually starting now the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which is a series of, I can't remember if it's 37 goals. We're working out how we can implement those across the university, and that's being led by our Deputy Vice-Chancellor. So I think probably like all academic institutions, we've spouted more than we've done, but we're gradually doing more. Yeah.
Thanks, Nick. Now, last one. Robbie Ringwald asks, do you think aged care sector can continue to support our growing ageing population sustainably in the current business model?
Oh, these are
Don't look at me.
yeah, I do. Because actually, I think one of the things we would talk about in sustainability is actually the future of work, right? Because you start to think about AI and what that will do for so many jobs and levels of automation. And I think one of the things we look at in terms of the future of work is there will be a lot of work in care. So, and I think where you see, we can all know that AI is going to take driving jobs. They're going to get hit hard by AI. We know that any low-level repetitive job, if you like, is going to get hit hard by AI. We know that actually it's moving into accounting sectors. It's going to hit hard. We know paralegal is going to get hit hard by AI. And one of the most resistant jobs is lecturers, thankfully. But what that means is that, we are going, as humans, we're going to adapt. Right? And one of the ways we will adapt and have to adapt is in that care sector. And we are going to, I'm pretty sure most of us want to be cared for by other human beings than robots, except for some of the dirtier tasks, perhaps. But yeah. So I think we'll be fine on that, because I think it will be a growth industry. So,
Thanks, Nick.
okay. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we have Associate Professor Sarah Davies to talk about the Asia Pacific perspective. Sarah is an Australian Research Council. We're supposed to have a break. Yes. That's right. They shouldn't put me in charge of things like this, really. But anyway, yes, we should have a break. What does it say on the timesheet? How many minutes are we allowed? We might come back at 7. 7 it is? I'll see you then.